guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Rachel Pintle and I am the owner and designer behind the Creative Siren. I'm really excited to be back here this week and show you a new design that I've been wanting to do for a really long time. I've seen a number of other creators do this one, but I thought that I would do it my way with polymer clay. I got the chance to do it like 2 weeks ago on a sippy cup tumbler for a friend of mine, and I just thought it would be really cute if we turned it into just a mug, since it's versatile for both kiddos and adults. So this week we will be making a honey pot mug. This one was a lot of fun, and it also will teach you how, like, a different way to do these drips. I know that there are a ton of you that do the epoxy drips. Personally, I've never been able to do them, so this was my easy hack to doing them. So hopefully if you have trouble like I did, this will help you there, because you can use this technique on a number of other designs. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. Okay, let's go ahead and start with a quick overview of everything that we'll be using for today's tutorial. First, we're going to start with a 14-ounce stainless steel coffee mug, which I will be prepping with Final Sand from DIY Epoxy. Next, we're going to be using Super Sculpey, which is my favorite type of clay to use. Also, I forgot to add, you'll need E6000 glue, an acrylic roller, and liquid Sculpey if you have it. Then let's move on to the color paints that we have. We have a yellow, a pewter gray, toasted marshmallow, burnt umber, and white, as well as black acrylic paint by Apple Barrel. You'll need your silicone tip tool, a craft hobby knife, and the paint brushes of your choice. After I prep my cup with Final Sand, I like to tape the bottoms and the tops of my cup. For me, I just personally like the aesthetic of having a little bit showing through, but it's completely a personal preference and you don't have to if you don't want to. After you've conditioned your clay, let's go ahead and roll it out into a long snake-like shape. Now this is going to be the top lip of our honey pot, so you're going to want it thicker but not too thick, so about a ½ inch is pretty good. Make sure you roll it out long enough so that it fits the entire top of your cup. Once you've finished rolling out your clay, go ahead and press it down gently so that you can secure it to the top of the cup. After you've done that, you'll want to round out your edges, so flatten out that top and round out those edges to create a really nice lip. And then go ahead and cut off any excess that you have at the end and match those ends up really well. Really blend in that seam so that it's virtually unnoticeable. After you've finished securing the top part of the clay to the cup, you're going to go ahead and want to bake it, and be sure to follow the instructions exactly the way that they are printed on the back of your clay packaging. Once your mug and your clay are completely cooled, we're going to start painting the main part of the cup. I like to paint mine for this design like a taupe color on top and a dark brown on the bottom. So let's start by making this taupe color. You're going to grab some of your burnt umber, and we're going to use about a $50 size amount. Then you're going to grab your toasted marshmallow, and you're going to pour just a little bit of that right in the middle of your burnt umber. And then grab your pewter gray and do the same thing. And finally, you're going to want just a little bit of white to lighten the whole thing. And then just mix it all together until you start to see it become this really pretty light taupe color. At this point, I'm gonna mark off the very middle part of my honey pot. So between the top lip and this bottom tape is roughly 3 inches. So this roll of painter's tape, it's stacked on top of each other, is about 1.5 inches, which will give me that halfway point around the entire cup. So I'm just gonna grab a Sharpie marker, lay it right on top of my painter's tape, and run my marker all the way around. And be sure to mark your handle as well, because we're gonna take the design all the way to the handle. And then just start painting. You'll probably need about 2 to 3 coats of each color to completely cover it. Apple barrel tends to be not as opaque as I'd like it to be, but it works in a pinch. After you're done painting your honey pot, we're gonna go ahead and start making the drips that'll come out from the top. Also, as a quick note, don't worry about your lines being super perfect between these 2 colors because we're going for whimsy, not necessarily perfect. Now let's go ahead and grab another piece of clay and roll it out as long as you can make it. Not too thin, but you'll want it pretty thin to start making these drips. After you've rolled it out to your desired length, we're just gonna cut a straight line down one side of it. And then cut off the ends here. After which you're just gonna start cutting out these drips. It can be any shape really, like drips really don't make sense. We just know that it's heavier on the bottom and thinner towards the top. So keep that in mind as you cut that out. Also, side note, be sure to set these extra scrap pieces aside because you might need them later if you need more drips. Grab the drips that you just cut out and we're gonna start to place them over the top rim of our honey pot. Go ahead and start pushing down all the way on the top, that way that it stays down. And don't worry if your drips are not sitting completely smooth up against the top of your mug. We're gonna smooth all of that out in a minute so that it sits seamlessly at the top. After you set those drips up, go ahead and go around all the edges and push down those edges to round them out, and then those drips, push them into the lip of your honey pot. You'll see why in a minute because we're gonna add dimension to those. This is where you're going to want to grab your silicone tip tool to help smooth out those top edges and really push the clay up to meet the top of your mug. Go ahead and continue rounding out all of those edges and pushing those drips right into the crease of that lip until you finish all the way around. So about now, you've probably noticed that I ran out of clay over the top of the lip of my cup. So I'm gonna grab that excess that I told you not to get rid of, and I'm gonna shape that to the desired length that I need to cover the rest of that lip. And then just blend in those edges. And I'm gonna do the same with this little bit that I did with the other bit, and I'm gonna round out all of those edges and make sure that the seam at the very top meets the mug seamlessly. Now I decided that I really wanted a little drip over the handle, so I just cut out a little bit of extra and I did the same thing, smoothing out all those edges and rounding out the bottoms. Now we're gonna move on to adding dimension to those drips. So grab your clay and tear off about a pea size bit of clay, and we're going to shape it into a teardrop shape. I find that this is easier just to help with the formation of the drip so that the bottom of the shape is heavier and then it tapers out at the top, because you really want the weight of that drip to be towards the bottom. And just keep pressing that drip into your outline there so that it meets really seamlessly and taper out that top. Again, remembering that we want most of that clay to be towards the bottom to really give it this bulbousy drip. And your silicone tip tool is really good for helping smooth out those lines. Once you get your drips looking exactly the way that you want them, go ahead and pop your mug into the oven one more time. As always, making sure that you follow the directions printed on the back of your packaging. Once your cup and your clay are completely cooled, go ahead and start painting the top of your honey, any yellow that you have. I'm using this apple barrel yellow. You'll probably need to paint it about 2 to 3 times to really get it a good solid bright yellow. Once you're done painting your honey drips, we're going to go ahead and set our mug aside, looking as adorable as ever, so that we can start working on the little bumblebee that we're going to place on one of these honey drips. So we're going to break down this little bumblebee into 2 parts. We're going to start with the wings. So grab another pea-sized bit of clay and then split it in 2. We're going to go ahead and make a teardrop shape just like we did with our drips, and really elongate the top of that teardrop. Really try and bring it to a point, and then we're going to turn it so that there's a sharp right angle. Now these are going to act as little spikes that we're going to stick into the body of the bee so that the wings really stay put. When you've got the wings shaped to the shape that you're looking for, you can grab your silicone tip tool at this point and put little details into the wing. You don't have to, it's just something that I like to do to give it some wing texture. And just do the very same thing to the other wing. Once your wings are done, go ahead and pop them into the oven. Now let's make the body of the bee. I like to go for a fatter bumblebee type body for this guy. So give yourself a good pea-sized bit and round out that bee butt. And then grab another piece to form the head. At this point, go ahead and push the head of your bee and his butt right together so that you can start forming one bee shape. Grab your silicone tip tool and merge those lines so that you don't have those really harsh lines there. Plus it'll help secure the 2 pieces together. Once your wings are done baking, go ahead and grab them, and we're going to push them into the soft body of the bee. Again, those spikes will prove really important in securing those wings. I've done it other ways, and this seems to be the best way. Your bee body is going to want to separate a little bit as you're pushing these wings in, so just be sure that you're kind of molding the clay so that it stays together, and really utilize your silicone tip tool to push all those pieces back together. And then at this point, you'll grab your liquid Sculpey and you'll just put it into the crevices of the wings. And this is just to add extra security so that your wings and the body of your bee don't budge. And once you're done with this step, go ahead and pop your bee into the oven. After your bee is cooled, let's go ahead and start painting him. I like to paint the whole body of the bee in this bright yellow. I know I've seen bees have black heads, but for some reason I just like mine to be yellow. So if you're feeling extra artsy after you've finished painting the wings of your bumblebee, is that you can go back in after your white has dried and kind of add highlights and lowlights to it with some shades of blue, using some soft pastels or even dry brushing some blue acrylic paint. It gives the wings a really cool texture, and it's a fun technique to play around with. Now, when it comes to the lines of your bumblebee, if you're not feeling too confident or you just don't have the steadiest of hands to paint these lines, that's completely okay. What I would suggest is that you cut out a little strip of black vinyl and just add that to the body of the bee. It'll be perfectly fine. And there you have it. Now you have this adorable little bumblebee that we can place on our mug. So here I'm just going to lightly sketch out the word honey. Again, just like I suggested with the bee, if you don't feel confident in having the smoothest of hands, you can go ahead and cut the word out using your Cricut or your Silhouette. If you're going to go that route, just be sure that you epoxy your mug first before you start adding your vinyl. I would hate for your paint to pull up on your transfer tape. That's just never any fun. After I've kind of sketched out the word honey, I'll go over and I'll darken those lines and really make them thicker so that you can see it really well onto the cup. And if you do decide to paint these words, just remember that we are going for whimsy and not perfect here. It's okay if these look like they were hand painted. I think that's the fun of this cup, is that it, can have a little bit of character to it. So here you'll notice that I did add a few extra drops off to the side of my honey. I did notice that my honey was a little off center, so adding these drops really helped me center the whole design, and that's where I'll end up putting our bee so that it doesn't feel too lopsided. Once everything on your cup is dry, go ahead and grab your E6000 and your little honeybee, and we're just going to glue him wherever you see fit. Like I said before, I'm going to glue him on those little extra honey drops right off to the side of my word honey, just so he looks like he's just crawling all over that. Once your bee is fully dried onto your mug, your honey pot is ready for epoxy. As you epoxy your cup, really pay attention to those crevices that you've created where the clay and your cup meet. You want to make sure that you get a good ample amount of epoxy in there, and you'll notice that that's where most of your bubbles are going to form. But if you hit it really quick with a heat gun or a torch, you'll be just fine. And that's it. Now you have this adorable honey pot mug to enjoy your cup of coffee in. If you loved this video, be sure to click here to see our last video. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another tutorial. See you later. Bye!